Hello to my beautiful family of light. Yes, you are. Indeed, you are. My name is Claudia, and either welcome back or welcome for the first time to my channel. This channel is all about humanity. You and I, all the people on this planet, being way more than we think we are, because we all have a unique quantum aspect to our genetic makeup. Anyhow, that's what this is. I am in the process of doing a series of videos, and the videos are designed to inspire memories in you that you may be able to interpret a little bit differently. I have kind of a unique way of looking at and approaching things, so we'll see how that works for you. So grab a paper and a pencil and let's get to it. This is a series of videos from my birth to, and I'm in my 70s, and growth, expansion, learning should always be an aspect of who we are. If that has been suppressed in you, then I'm going to ask you to take a walk on the wild side with me, and let's go do some exploring. The last video was number 18. I'm headed for number 19. And in this particular segment of the videos that I'm talking about, I moved to an area with some guidance that was given, and have established myself in a home. I'm now about 6 months into being in this little high desert next to the mountains area. And I heard a voice over Christmas that during a cantata, a speaking part, and I just got, my body just broke out into chills all over the place. And so I'm about to, and I never did get to meet, well, I did just right after Christmas get to meet this fellow. So I'm about to begin a journey actually with him into what I will call the wilderness. This is very raw, wild country with rattlesnakes, sage, and cactus, and grizzly bears, and all kinds of amazing nature. And we are presently, he and I, in the Clark Fork Canyon. The Clark's Fork is a river that comes down out of Montana and joins the Yellowstone River. And we're in a beautiful canyon, spectacular scenery. And he's hunting for a walking stick. I'm wearing flip-flops because I wasn't prepared for this drive. It turned into a hike. And so I'm going to read you a little bit more from the story. In fact, he headed off to find a hiking stick. And I wandered a little bit, staying on kind of this road, very rustic 4-wheel drive road, and became an observer of nature. I mean, it's so much silence when you're by yourself out in the wilderness. And I could hear the roar, it's springtime, and I could hear the roar of the river, and I thought it must be massive. And but I didn't want to go through all the scrub and past the cactus and sage to get down towards it so I could see it. Anyhow, so he wandered off to go find a hiking stick. I sat on a log, and after some time, being inspired and infused with a really powerful notion that I actually belonged here, got up to go look for him and join him. And so I walked through the scrub and got down to where he had, there's a massive big rock, kind of a flat top, and he was a little bit beyond that towards the river. When he saw me headed down through the scrub and realized I had made up my mind I was going to go down there and not just hang out by the car, then he came up to join me and helped me up onto this rock. And we shared an apple and some cheese and water, just things to fuel your body a little bit. And then he stretched out with his head under his little backpack and had a little bit of a brief snooze. And I just continued to look, around me at the canyon. And now I could see the river, and it was raging. And, all in all, and we talked so comfortably. All in all, that was the day that Jacob and I became friends. He became comfortable calling and, asking if I wanted to go on another drive, which I learned how to to change and put on my regular shoes if it was a warm day, and, to grab layers, because in the spring I came to know that you could have 10 feet of snow out of the blue. And but we became very good friends at that point, and he taught me how to do lots and lots of things. And I knew nothing or very little about fishing, hiking the outdoors, and certainly not the wilderness. When you have creatures that are foreign to what you know, then it takes a little courage to take that step and move forward into your fear. Because once you do that, the fear, and you stand in it for a minute, it's like me sitting on the log, and I thought, boy, I don't dare, I was petrified, really. I don't dare move from here. But when I began to look around and could hear the river, there was a massive waterfall behind me that I hadn't seen. There were wildflowers at my feet that were so tiny. They weren't even as big as the tip of my finger. Some of them were just, very tiny, all shapes, colors, and sizes. Once you're out in nature and you're in that relaxed state, or you can get into that relaxed state where you lose any anxiousness and fear, some pretty powerful things can happen, because that's when that mechanism that's within us becomes active and we can hear it. But anyhow, he and I became friends. We hiked a lot. He took me many places. He taught me how to fish. He taught me even how to read animal scat over time, how to, when you have to pick out a fishing pole, reel, and all of that sort of thing, I didn't have a clue. He had the patience of a saint, and he used to laugh a lot. Now, fortunately, most of those were laughing at me because, you're awkward. But I have a pretty good sense of adventure. I knew I was awkward and it feels funny, but I joined him. It was just like, hey, I've never done this before. So, and the thing that I think finally gave him, and it was for a long time, I had to wear a pair of gloves to thread a worm onto the hook. You'll probably find that funny too. I still do, because I'm not, the fact that it's wiggling around and it's alive and you're threading this live thing onto a hook. But the end result is that nature is going to provide you with a meal. I'm not somebody who would ever fly fish for catch and release. To me, that's like playing with nature, God's creation, and that does not suit my nature. But anyhow, we used to have a lot of fun together. And on one of those treks, we drove up into the Beartooth Mountains, and we were headed, I don't even remember the name of the lake now, but it was quite a long hike. It was spring, and I slipped on the rocks. And the thing that I'd been told, if you fall in the water, you go feet first, get yourself turned around, because if you hit your head on a rock, you're liable to pass out and drown. But anyhow, so I did, got myself turned around, and I was embarrassed, so I was laughing. That's my coping mechanism with, oh my God, I must look ridiculous. But really, he was concerned and walking down. There wasn't, unless you have a rope or a long branch of some kind to be able to stabilize, one has to stay on the earth and you're floating downstream, but unless you can have something that you can reach out to them to grab onto. Well, luckily, a couple of Forest Service, actually 3 Forest Service workers were heard us and came, and they formed a string of people hanging onto each other's wrists, grabbed onto me and fished this flopping flounder out of the water, and got me onto dry land. And once they found, made sure we were okay, then they headed off, and Jacob and I sat for a minute and tried to decide whether to go on to the little fishing lake that we had intended to go to, or whether, to turn back to the car. And I said, oh no, we're, how close are we? And he said, well, we're almost there. Well, he didn't tell me we had one more stretch of river to cross. That's another story, isn't it? But you know what? I'm a very healthy and strong person. And back then at age 40, I guess I had turned 40, it was okay. You have a little bit of a bruised ego, but it was all right to keep moving on. And so we headed off and stayed on course, but by the time we got up there, he built a fire so that we could dry out our socks. And of course, I had a lot more on me that was wet, but at least we're trying to get some part of us dry for the road heading back. And interestingly enough, after we had crossed that second stretch of river, it was very quiet. We were deep into forest, and the 2 of us were hiking with our equipment and not making much noise, little chatter now and then. But all of a sudden, the back of the hair on my neck stood straight up, and I stopped. And I thought to myself, what is going on here? And Jacob was still walking off, but I stood there for a moment, and I looked around, and there was a mountain lion on a rock, crouched down. It was a bit of a distance from me, 150, 200 feet, something like that, or yards. And I just looked, and I thought, well, I guess if you're going to eat me, you're going to eat me, but I'm going fishing. So I just started walking back. Who does that? Who does that? I have no idea. Nobody I know would do that except for me. So I started walking, and pretty soon I felt that animal's eyes leave me and go into the forest. What an interesting feeling. Now, it was the first time that I realized that I have good antenna. I have very good sensing, and it's one of my gifts. We all have sensing, feeling, and knowing. We all have that. But it was quite honestly one of the first times that I was acutely aware of it. And so we caught, fish. We caught a few fish, and, went back, got to the car and went back and had dinner at his place, and had a wonderful time. And all through that spring and summer, we did hiking and fishing and exploring. He and I went to dinners together and went to movies occasionally, and went up to, there's a town 120 miles away, Billings, where if you needed something that you couldn't get in a small town, that was one of the places you could go. It was just one of those things that he and I really connected. We really connected. And it was in that summer, it was June, I believe, that my son came for his first visit. And, well, not his first, my goodness, he came Thanksgiving. I did not go home at Christmas that year. I stayed in Wyoming. And I was lonely, but it was okay. You know, I didn't know many people, and the holidays are always a family time, but I've always been comfortable in my own skin. I entertain myself pretty well, as you can see. Anyhow, there was, you know, my son by then was 14, I think, and had turned 14, and he came that summer, and I just really appreciated the good person that he had become, and really a nice young man. And so he and Jacob and I had a wonderful time showing him around. Jacob didn't join us all the time. And I left him to his own devices. The neighbor lady's, one of her daughters was my son's age. And so they went off, they became friends and went off and did things, and she showed him around too. So that really concludes the introduction, my introduction to the voice that I hadn't known what it was, that felt so familiar, and yet it, you know, come to find out, really, I did not know this person, not in the way that you and I know, but that's coming up. There's more to the story. So, you know, what we're learning here, you and I, if you can realize that what I'm showing you or telling you is that through my life's journey and adventures, I am beginning to come aware that there is something more about me that I never knew existed. As a person who worked and lived in the city, who was a working mom, had to take care of, you know, my son and the home and a husband and all of the things that go along with that, because my husband, you know, it was just my job, that's all. And so this is the first time in my life, in this last 6 months of being out on my own completely, out in the wilderness, out in the quiet. I mean, absolutely still. You can hear birds, which I hadn't learned to identify yet. I'd seen golden eagles and osprey and things I never had seen before. And so this is the first time in my life I'm actually quieting down. My mind is quieting down. My body is relaxing. I'm beginning to take notice that the weight that I had accumulated was a barrier to the outside world, and that we're beginning to shed those pounds, because Jacob was taking me on these adventures, and I wasn't even noticing. It was just, everything was just happening, just all at one time, and it was just smooth and simple and easy. And to me, that's how life is supposed to go. Now, it isn't going to stay that way because, you know, lots of things happen, and stuff is about to change. So stay with me. The next adventures are just around the corner. And so thank you for joining me. I'm so happy to have you here. And it is really fun for me to share my adventures. I hope you're finding something within those that will help you to resonate with something that's happening within you, and maybe inspiring you to step a little beyond the box that maybe has been boundaries and borders that have been a part of your life, so that you can explore more. So be bold and courageous today. And thank you so much. You know I love you this much. These arms go all the way around this planet and you. Be good stewards of our planet and each other. Be kind and generous in that. And until I see you again, be well, stay safe, be happy, and know that you are way more than you think you are. Thank you for joining me. I will see you in the next video.